Hey there guys, what's going on? Gale here. Welcome back to the YouTube channel once again for another Genshin Impact video. And I know it's too many back-to-back videos about Genshin Impact, but man, it's hype season. It's Nesnaya season, baby. I mean, we've got the new PV come out, of course, right today, and I am so excited to talk about it in more detail in this video because I've just been thinking about so many theories, and I'm not only just thinking about so many theories myself, I've been just seeing so many other theories that people are putting out there, and of course, a majority of it surrounds the ending of the PV. So we're gonna be taking a look at the ending more so than anything else throughout this PV. I might talk about some other stuff regarding this PV as well, but my main focus is all going to be around the Tsaritsa, the kid we saw at the end, and of course the chessboard containing the Gnosis. Now, of course, if you guys going to enjoy this video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you do play Genshin Impact, if you do play it for the story, let me know your thoughts as well, what your theories might be. I'm curious to see what you guys have to say down below. But man, like I said, I'm very excited about Nesnaya, man. Everything that they've shown so far regarding it has been super exciting, and especially with these new characters, it's looking like it's setting up to be even more exciting. So before we actually get to the end, I immediately want to kind of talk about the curses these guys are talking about, Alyosha and Vodyanitsa. Sorry, I'm still trying to remember all the names. Vodyanitsa is obviously super easy to remember because it's actually been said in the story already by Linnea and a couple of other people already. But Alyosha is obviously one of the brand new characters we've seen for the second time. Obviously, we saw him previously in the teaser trailer, the very first teaser trailer. They are talking about some curses. So first and foremost, snowstorms. Second of all, Project Stuja, and third of all, the Tsaritsa. So the third one, the Tsaritsa, will come on towards the end because I think that curse of the Tsaritsa is linked to, of course, the kid and the Gnosis and her challenging the shades, right? But the snowstorm. So first and foremost, the snowstorms is something that we've been teased a little bit in the last couple of trailers, right? So in the most recent trailer with Nesnaya, where we saw Paimon suffering from what seems to be a heavy cold, she was grabbing onto her chest, not able to breathe properly, seemed very weak. And then of course we also saw later on in the stream as well that, you know, the traveler was struggling against the heavy cold. It seemed like he was going through a blizzard. And the people of Nesnaya, he was talking about it. I think it was him or Tartaglia. I think it was Tartaglia's voiceover at the time, saying, how long do the people of Nesnaya have left, right? And it seems like with the snowstorms, it's a case that potentially, maybe, again, this is a big maybe, the heavenly principles aren't happy with what the Tsaritsa is planning and plotting. And obviously, they are taking it out on the people of Nesnaya by inducing these snowstorms, by causing these heavy weather conditions that are causing the people of Nesnaya to struggle. And so that is probably a curse, one of the curses, right? And that's probably what they're talking about. Project Stuja is such a unknown still. We've known about it for quite some time now. We've known about it since Arlecchino's story quest way back in Fontaine in 4.6 or 5. 4.5 or 4.6. I can't remember, to be honest. I can't remember. But it was one of those patches. And Project Stuja has been something we've, you know, had many discussions about in the community, right? So many theory videos, so many lore videos have been talking about it, trying to figure out what it is. I think the likes of Minsleaf and Ashikai and Bran have all had their opinions regarding it as well. And I would probably say that Project Stuja is definitely something along the lines of, it is a heavy set of resources being funded towards a plan to obviously take on the Shades. It's as simple as that, I think. I think it's a very simple plan of action, but what it does mean is because those resources are taking from the people of Nesnaya, if we move a little bit forward in the trailer, in today's trailer, we see the people of Nesnaya objecting. There are potentially ministers or mayors potentially of certain regions or families potentially rejecting and objecting to the idea of putting more towards or extending Project Stuja. And we saw it even in the teaser trailer that, you know, there is that upper class, the affluent class, who are fine and moving forward with it or living life happily, whereas the lower class seems to be struggling, you know, being taken away potentially for rebelling against Project Stuja. And it does seem like Project Stuja is going to cause some strife amongst the people of Snezhnaya as well. So that's another plot point and another curse that is being put onto the people of Snezhnaya. I do think Project Stuja is going to be, it is definitely a critical plot point, I think, for, of course, what's coming up in Snezhnaya. There's no doubt about it. The question is, what is it? And how does it influence and affect the people of Snezhnaya? I'm curious to see what you guys think in regards to Project Stuja, because it does seem, I think, based on just what we have been told so far with, you know, the fact that Pulcinella is the one pushing it forward, the Regrator or Pantalone is the one funding it, and of course we are seeing the House of Earth potentially being used as tools to push it even forward, based on what we heard from Arlecchino in 4.5, 4.6. Project Stuja is seemingly something that is not appreciated or approved by the general public of Snezhnaya. So that is going to be a big factor, I think, when it comes to certain characters. Because I assume, again, like I said, we're probably going to see a lot of back and forth between certain groups who are not happy with the idea that Project Stuja is actually happening or being conducted even. I think that's going to be very interesting, to say the least. And then the third thing is, of course, the Tsaritsa. Now, that is, of course, the big one, right? The biggest one here. And I think a lot of people have been theorizing exactly what's going on. So I think we got to start from the very top, right? I think we got to start from the very top of the last 2 minutes of this trailer. It dominated the trailer, actually, if you think about it, the ending, right? And was pretty obvious as to what's going to happen, right? I think it's very clear what's going to happen. We are going to see the Shades be taken on by the Tsaritsa. The Tsaritsa is going to challenge at least Renova. I've seen some theories about Rhine-Daughter as well, which we'll come on to in a little bit. But first and foremost, we have to talk about this picture, right? We see Renova cutting away a part of this picture. Now, we don't know who she cut away, right? We can assume it's possibly the Tsaritsa's lover. Possibly, right? And based on this image, right, we're seeing right here, we see the kid holding a flower potentially given by somebody else. And that's being handed to the Tsaritsa, right? Happens, right? It's one of those cutesy moments between a family where the father is like, give this to your mother, and, you know, the kid gives it to the mother, and, you know, the mother happily takes it, and it's a sweet moment, right? It's what would be a sweet moment, but it seems like at this point in time that the lover has been taken away by the Shades. The question is, who is the lover and why was he taken away, right? So let's move a little bit forward and carry on with this, of course, right? You can see a little bit of a faint blur here, and I assume that's part of the image being taken away, you know, similar-ish, I'd say, to when we saw, you know, Renova deleting that space in the God's Limit trailer, I think it was, right? It seems very similar to that, right? You can see that sort of haziness being cut away and it turns to darkness, right? I think there is a factor there where it's basically that space has been deleted. So it's a possibility. Now, let's talk about the design of this character, because a lot of people have been theorizing based on the design of this character, right? So first and foremost, he does look like Finon a little bit. No, but I don't think it's anything to do with Finon. I will say, man, a lot of people have been just pointing out how he looks similar-ish to Finon with the hair color and everything and the blue eyes. But speaking of eyes, that I think is the first thing that a lot of people notice, the star eyes. Could he be Conran? not impossible. But if he is half-blooded, because let's be real, that's probably the case. We know the Tsaritsa isn't Conrayan. She is part of the Snowland Fae, most likely, right? Based on the stories we've gotten, the about sections, just the appearance of her as well, it does seem like she is going to be a Snowland Fae. So she is not Conrayan, but her lover might be. And what that potentially means is, one, the pure-blooded Conrayans, we know they're cursed with immortality, or they were killed in the entire Cataclysm event. So that's point number one. But what that does mean potentially, as a half-blooded Conrayan, the kid could have been turned into a Hilichurl, right? That could have happened. But I don't think that was the case at all, for two reasons. One, I don't see it happening. It's as simple as that. You can also see, again, my point from earlier, that this whole side is turned black, basically, right? But I think that this is a sign of her turning the kid into ice. I personally think, and this is a theory that I have, and maybe some others have as well, is that before the kid was turned into a Hilichurl, similar to Caribert, I think she's turned him into basically a cryosleep, effectively avoiding the whole idea of him turning into a Hilichurl by just putting him in cryosleep, avoiding his body from turning into a Hilichurl. And I assume if that is the theory that turns out to be correct, we'll probably see his body covered in ice, potentially. And the idea is that she's trying to obviously take on the shades and the heavenly principles to stop him from turning into a Hilichurl when she wakes him up again. I have a sneaking suspicion that that might be the case. I could be wrong. I could be very well wrong. But I do think that could be a possibility and a theory that might be at hand, right? It does work really well in that sense. And it does also show the power of the Tsaritsa as well. She's obviously not able to completely halt that from happening entirely, of course, right? She's not able to stop that entirely from happening. But it does potentially lead to, of course, her a significant reason as to why she's even taking on these shades and why she's been plotting and planning for so many centuries even now, right? It just makes a whole lot of sense. The other theory a lot of people have had, right? And if we go back here, back to the design of this character, look at the chess piece, the star. Very much looks like a stellar linchpin, right? And do you guys remember what was said about stellar linchpins in the most recent live stream? They are linked to the third descender. Is it possible that the third descender was the Tsaritsa's lover? I'd be very surprised. I'd be very surprised because it just doesn't add up. The timelines don't necessarily add up in any way, shape, or form. I don't see Sarlonainen being the Tsaritsa's lover. I don't see it. I know so many people have theorized it, but I don't see it, to be honest. It just doesn't make sense. The timings don't add up, right? With everything that's happened. It just doesn't, I don't feel like it adds up. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm being a little bit weird about it, but I just need to double check, because I will admit, to be honest, even though I'm a big fan of the lore, I always, it's just a bad habit of mine. I guess it's a little bit of like their names being similar, but Sarvatonen and Sarlonainen, I keep mixing up their lore a little bit, to be honest. And generally speaking as well, Sarlonainen's lore ends up being a little bit difficult for me to just remember completely. But we do know that he was killed in Pojola, and that his remains were turned into the Seven Gnosis, right? We do remember that. But he was slain during the Archon War and the War of Funerary Flames. It was in between that. So again, that's the reason why I don't see the timing matching up entirely, unless the Saritsa had the kid with him, and the kid is here, and then the kid was taken away during the events of the Cataclysm, is when the Saritsa lost all her love, right? It's a bit difficult. I don't see that being the case. We're gonna have to wait and see as to what this kid means, because obviously, clearly, this kid has much more meaning than what any of us think he might have, just because of everything to do with him. The outfit he's wearing, very Conrayan style outfit, the eyes, the chest piece with the star. It all leads to potentially this kid having some link to the Saritsa's lover, for one, and number two, to Conrea or the third descender in some way, shape, or form. It's going to be very interesting, to say the least. And I think that that is a big theory that is going to be at hand when it comes to these, when it comes to the storyline and what we might expect to see, for sure. I am very fascinated to see how this goes, of course, with the Saritsa. Calls her mother, of course. We heard that, of course, in the original trailer. I still gotta say, her design looks very nice. I must admit, her design looks very, very nice. All right, so now we move ahead. We'll just move ahead because, of course, I think those were the major theories I had regarding the kid. I'm curious to see what y'all think as well. Do y'all think it's actually her? First and foremost, do you think it's actually her kid, or is it just like a sort of potentially a sort of like a what if, everything was fine, and if the lover was still around, they could have had a child and everything of that sort? Or, like I said, do you think it's some link to Conrea, some link to the third descender? I'm curious to see what y'all have to say in regards to that. So let's move on to the next part. So now we see her taking on Renova. Basically, death is not the enemy of love. It is the enemy is the real enemy is the blessings given by deluded gods. So that is interesting as well. I am curious to see what that means, but this is the critical theory point I want to make here. So we see the chessboard fully in action, right? Obviously, a continuation of what we saw in Winter Night's Lazo. A lot of us, I think, thought that we'd see Piero here, but instead we ended up seeing the Saritsa with Rhine-daughter here. So let's start off with the chessboard, right? So first and foremost, we see that the Animo piece has been knocked down. The Electro piece is still standing strong outside the board. However, the Geo piece is still on the chessboard. The Hydro piece has been knocked down. The Sumeru piece is still standing strong outside the chessboard, and the Cryo chess piece is also on the board. Of course, we know the Pyro piece is missing. We don't know what's exactly happened with that yet and how that comes into play, but I think this chessboard has a lot of meaning to it, right? So, first and foremost, I think that the pieces that are knocked down, right, the ones that are fallen over, I don't know what it means for the Animo one. I'm still thinking about it. I thought that by the time I record this video, I spend the entire day actually just trying to think of an idea, looking at other people and seeing what they have to say. But it's just difficult to come up with a good theory in regards to why the Animo piece is knocked down. Could it be that, a part of me, and this is my working theory, I could be wrong and you guys can let me know. A working theory I have is that in the Hexen Circle Witch's Diary thingy, where we see, I can't remember the exact name of the buff thing, or the Hexarai story, right? We see that, Venti gets back some of his power, but he says that he doesn't have much time, or there isn't much time left. There was a little bit of a hint towards that. Could that be the meaning of that chess piece being knocked over? Possibly. But again, I don't want to place too much emphasis on that theory because it's, like I said, it's still a working theory. I'm not sure how right it is, to be quite honest. I'm still not sure. On the other hand, with the Hydro piece being knocked over, I think that's the most obvious one, because the Archon hood is dead for the Hydro side, right? There is an actual Dragon Sovereign running it. Nervilette is running it. It's not Farina, it's not Focalors. the Hydro Archon seat is completely destroyed. It is all in the hands of the Hydro Sovereign now. So that's why the Hydro piece is knocked over. With Raiden and Nahida, I think their pieces are standing still strong, but outside the chessboard because they don't have a role to play anymore. Their role is complete. You see what I mean? Obviously, they'll still play a factor in what is to come, of course, towards the end of the story, but their role up until now is done. Nahida with the Irminsul and creating Aru, I think that was her role. And it's one of the reasons why I think that what Dotori was allowed to do by the Tsaritsa was done on purpose to ensure that things would happen. I think the Tsaritsa planned this out alongside Piero potentially to make things happen, to take away the powers from the shades, basically. Because remember what was said at the end of the Sumeru Song of the Welkin Moon quest. I say Sumeru, but it was still under the Not Cry chapter tagline. But at the end of Truths Amongst the Pages of Purana, it was said, the fates are now open to play. The heavenly principles don't have control over it anymore. The fates are open to play. I think that that was Nahida's role in taking that away from the heavenly principles, giving it a completely open end, basically, and allowing the Tsaritsa to have a more open field to play with. I think that is something that happened. I don't know what Raiden's role would have been to play in all of this. It is a bit difficult to say because it's been, we've not really had Raiden play a role since Inazuma, realistically, right? We've not really seen her actually actively do something yet, right? Which is difficult to say. So who knows what exactly the Tsaritsa wanted from Raiden that she did, because it's a bit difficult. I mean, with all the delusion stuff happening, maybe it was to test out the delusions in Inazuma and then, of course, see Raiden. Could it have been to get Raiden back into action? Actually, maybe that might have been the case, because remember, going into Inazuma, even before the delusion stuff happened and all the vision decree happened and everything, Raiden was completely out of it, the Raiden Shogun. Now that the Raiden is more active, she can play a role still. That's why she's still standing strong out of the chessboard, while, of course, previously, while she was still on the field, she would have been obviously a non-factor or a difficult role to play because she was completely out of it. She was just letting her robot or her puppet deal with the majority of stuff happening. But now she's actually actively able to take over and obviously has the aid of Yae Miko and everything, right? So maybe that's what it is. That was the whole idea behind having the delusions come into play, having the people rebel back, set up the visions again. I'm not sure about that theory entirely, but that would make the most sense now that I'm thinking about it, because that was the only reason why everything kind of went the way it did, right? With Senora coming into play, being a willing sacrifice even maybe for what happened at the end, right? Ooh, that is actually a theory that I might need to check with other people about, to be honest. That's a very interesting one if that is the case, because why else wouldn't Raiden Shogun's piece be on the field? It is a very interesting theory, but I don't know how much stock I put into it myself, to be quite honest. It's a very interesting theory. But now we move on to the last two pieces, of course, right? The Cryo Archon's piece and the Geo Archon piece, or the Geonosis and the Cryonosis, of course, right? Cryo, we know why it's on the field still. We still know why it's on the field. What is more fascinating is the Geonosis is still on the field. And we know what that means, right? Zhongli's contract to end all contracts. It's still in play, remember. Zhongli is probably going to play a big factor, I think, in this upcoming patch. I do think he's going to play a big role in the upcoming patch. The Heaven Star, I mean, we know that, every Lantern Rite, I feel like there's always something that sets up Zhongli to play a bigger and bigger role in future chapters. And I think it's coming to a head now, with his Gnosis piece still being on the field, still in play. I think that we're going to see Zhongli have a big role to play. And that is going to be the big factor I think we're going to see come Snezhnaya's ending, right? Towards the end. He's going to do something that's going to cause some form of chaos to happen, for sure. I don't see any other way this going, to be honest. I don't see any other way this is going to go because his piece is still on the field. It is very fascinating. I love the symbolism that this chessboard has given us since, of course, Winter Night's Lazo. Of course, I can't remember the game specifically, but it is of course with Gary Kasparov. I think it's Gary Kasparov. If I'm not mistaken, I could be getting the surname wrong. Gary Kasparov versus Deep Blue. That the chessboard was laid out like that back then. And obviously that was the whole idea, was that, you know, it's us versus AI. We then start learning about the heavenly principle potentially being AI. Now we're coming to a point where we're using the gnosis as chess pieces to signify who's in, who's out, whose role is done, who's faltered along the way, potentially. It's going to be very interesting. I think Zhongli and the Tsaritsa are the last two archons to play a big role in the fight, or the lead up to the final fight against the heavenly principles, or the shades even, to be honest, in this case. So that is going to be very interesting. Now we move on to the ending, and this is where some people have some more theories about Reindotter's inclusion here. A lot of people are saying, of course, she's still probably going to be alongside alongside Renova, which is not impossible. But a theory that I've seen going around, and I actually kind of like it a little bit. I don't know how likely it is, to be honest. I think it's like a 20% chance of it being likely. But hey, that 20% could end up being a banger depending on how they execute it. It also gives Reindotter way too many roles, to be honest. But what if she is the 10th Harbinger? I'm just saying, it is a funny theory in the sense, like, you just can't believe it would happen. But imagine if it does. I don't see it happening, purely because Piero is probably still against all the sinners, right, for what they've done. But just imagine that the Tsaritsa just hired Reindotter as the secret 10th Harbinger, telling nobody, just the Tsaritsa herself knows, and is using Reindotter as a bit of an intel into the other shades. I think that would be quite fascinating, to say the least. I do think so, but I'd be wondering as to how Niberius feels about it as well. Obviously, she's able to still communicate with Reindotter, still influence a little bit, it seems like. Not much, but still. So it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out, what Reindotter is doing in Snezhnaya as a whole. I'm very fascinated. I'm very fascinated by her appearance at the end, and that theory of her being the potential 10th Harbinger. Like I said, way too many roles. I mean, this lady is a sinner, a Hexen Circle member, potential Harbinger. I mean, come on, like, lady, you gotta stop. I mean, that's too many jobs at once. Like, that's too many jobs at once, lady. You gotta chill. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. I'm curious to see what you guys have to say as well. Like I said, I love this period of Genshin, generally speaking, of any game, to be honest. The theory crafting, the ideas behind what could happen, you know, in future chapters. It's very exciting. It is very, very exciting. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, all that sort of good stuff. And I will see you guys in the next one. Take it easy, everybody. Bye-bye.